I guess some people would say that I shouldn't care about it because this is a dead tree, not a living one. But everything in the forest contributes to the whole. The dead trees are just as much a part of the ecosystem as living ones. They contribute nutrients and seed beds for the next generation of life. The whole system is part of one whole. Have any of you ever been to one of California's giant tree forests? Have you ever been out to see one of those? Redwood or sequoia? I remember going as a kid when we were on a trip to San Francisco, going to Muir Woods National Monument. It's like several hundred acres of land that contain these huge, huge trees. And they're all these old growth coast redwood trees. I learned this week as I Googled it. But if you've ever been in the presence of one of these beasts, you know that they're just gigantic. They are super tall. They can be up to 379 feet tall. They can be 29 feet wide. They're just majestic. And they're ancient trees. They are just a sight to behold. They're absolutely incredible. And I remember standing there as a little kid being just in awe of how giant they were. And they can be 1,200 to 1,800 years old. They are old. They are ancient. And just for your information, that is the longest living thing on earth. These trees on these coasts, in these forests. Now, a lot of them are unfortunately have been cut down or are being displaced by environmental changes. But when these trees live, they live a long time. Their long life and their unbelievable size make them about as amazing as anything we have in this world and in this country. But like any living thing, they do eventually die. And as you're seeing these pictures go up on the screen here, trees die and eventually they fall down. And I'm not 100% certain that they make noise when they fall down, but I do know that when they fall to the earth, they stay right there where they fall. And so there's these things in forests everywhere called nurse logs. And what nurse logs are dead trees that have fallen down and have very slowly begun decomposing. And they decompose, and when they decompose, they create this really rich, nutrient-rich soil that creates this environment that gives all of the right things so that new trees can grow. Not to mention, when they fall, they open up places where light hasn't been able to shine because of the tree. And as you're seeing in these photos, and I know it's kind of hard to see, all it takes is a few seeds to fall on top of these dead, decomposing trees for new life to just start springing up from these trees. And they grow right there on top of the trees, and eventually they create these super unique looking trees where the roots grow on top of the ground instead of underneath it. So that short snippet that I read at the beginning of my sermon, that was not me. I did not say those things. That short snippet is from this book that I'm reading right now called The Eagle Tree. And in that book is this incredible young boy named March, and March is autistic. And so he's got this incredible capacity for knowledge and remembering everything about something, and his something is trees. He loves trees. He loves to climb trees. He loves to read about trees. He loves to say the names of the trees as he walks past the trees. And as he's walking through the woods one day, he utters this line about dead trees, and it's absolutely brilliant. I guess some people would say that I shouldn't care about it because this is a dead tree, not a living one. But everything in the forest contributes to the whole. The dead trees are just as much a part of the ecosystem as the living ones. They contribute nutrients and seed beds for the next generation of life. The whole system is part of one whole. The giant trees that we see in Muir Woods and Redwood Forest and Sequoia National Park, they are absolutely gorgeous. Really, any trees are gorgeous, but these giant ones, they especially are worthy of every bit of our awe and our wonder, worthy of titles like glorious and majestic and unbelievable and amazing. They are, in my opinion, the height of beauty and the spectacle of God's creation. They are what gets our attention, and rightfully so. They're incredible. But only in their weakest, most vulnerable, most deathly state, in the form that would not garner really any attention at all. It is only then that they are able to give way to new life. They are a part of one whole, an absolutely vital part of it. This letter to the Hebrews that we've been reading from the last couple weeks is written to exhort Christ-following people to persevere through these early Christian days by talking about who Christ is and what Christ has done. We've heard the last couple weeks that Jesus makes what is good better, and that Jesus is a brother to us in faith. And our reading for today calls Jesus a high priest, someone who has been appointed for a great honor, who sits high on a throne, who will be in his glorious designation forever. And a lot of emphasis is put on this rightful glory that is owed Jesus because of this succession that has gone on for many years, all the way back to that guy named Melchizedek. Jesus has been appointed by God himself to be this great high priest. Jesus stands higher than anyone else in this position of high priest, and it's important for us to know that, and for us to, week in and week out, come to this place and praise that spectacular glory of this great high priest. But we don't have a high priest, as the text says. We don't have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses. We don't have a high priest who cannot deal gently with us ignorant and wayward people, for he too has been subject to weakness. We don't have a high priest who glorifies himself, but instead cries and prays for us. We don't have a high priest whose long, great life here on earth is the only thing for which he deserves glory. Instead, he's been made perfect in his suffering and death, in his short life here on earth. And we know the power of new life only because of his weakness. You know that our world thrives on our ability to attain power by continuing to climb even higher, to push even harder, to keep getting ahead so that we reach that point of great honor and privilege, and people may look on us with awe and wonder at how we accomplished such great things. Hard work is good, and achieving great things is something to be proud of. Make sure you hear me say that. Because Jesus is worthy of all of the glory and wonder and awe and amazingness. He's worthy of all of that because of what he did here on earth. The miraculous love and the healing power of God shone through him in all that he did. And because of that, Jesus deserves to be praised for his place at the right hand of the Father, and as the great high priest who is placed in charge of all things pertaining to God. But we only know the greatness of Jesus' glory the greatness of his wonder, his awe, his beauty, his power. We only know that because of how Jesus was made powerful in weakness. How Jesus was made powerful in vulnerability and death. Jesus did the very opposite of what we'd expect from someone who is attaining glory. Greatness in our world is here. Jesus knows, though, that his power is made more great the more that he obeys the will of God to go to the cross and suffer on our behalf. On the behalf of God's people. Jesus' greatness is here, at the foot of the cross. Only in his weakness do we know the power of new life in our lives. Jesus created new life out of sin for generations of people in his most weak and vulnerable state. And so knowing that, we know that that is what we are created for. Each and every one of us, we are created for new life. That we are made powerful not by what we accomplish, by what we have, by what our standing in society is, by how strong we are, by how much money we have, by what our skin color is, or whatever the world thinks is what makes us powerful. Our power is known in our weakness, about knowing our weakness, about our willingness to be vulnerable with each other, and our calling to proclaim life where there is death. We have great examples of this that have come before us. Paul writing from prison, Martin Luther standing against the power structure of the Roman Catholic Church. We have more modern examples. Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, even the one who called himself the greatest, Muhammad Ali. Even he knew that it wasn't it. That his power here on earth or in the boxing ring wasn't just the only thing. There is power in weakness. There is power and new life in places of death. Many great leaders and teachers before us have known that. Jesus knew that. It is only in the state of making ourselves vulnerable to others, helping each other to bear the pain and suffering of this world, that we are able to know the power of justice and peace and its potential to change lives and to change the world that we live in. To shine light where it previously could not shine. And so we'd all be good, better, if we looked as that young boy March did on what the world deems unworthy of our care and attention. And instead saw how each part contributes to the next generation of life. To see how we are all part of one whole. That is our power. The power and glory of the great high priest to proclaim the gift made perfect in weakness, vulnerability, and death. And that gift is abundant, new life in Jesus Christ. Let us pray. Holy God, you have set apart your Son to be the great high priest of all who believe in you. You have put him in a position of power and glory. And we praise you for that. King of kings and Lord of lords. But God, we know that the only way that power has come is through Jesus' weakness, his vulnerability, his suffering, and his death. And so we give you thanks that through the gift of Jesus Christ, you bear all the weight of this world. That you see new life and light within each and every one of us. Help us to proclaim that new life in this world. To know that the power of changing grace doesn't come from our attaining glory and position and power in this world, but instead through the weakness, vulnerability, and bearing with one another. We thank you for that great high priest, the one made perfect in suffering. In his name we pray.